Hi, this is Dr. Michelle Robin with Small Changes, Big Shifts, Building Rhythm and Resilience. And I believe if you'll change one thing a month, one thing for the next 12 months, you'll change your life forever. Thanks for joining me on the journey. Today is a Wisdom Wednesday on the Rhythm and Resilience series. We're on day 3. And as I mentioned, I know we've got some new people joining us, as I mentioned over the last few days, in March, I was having trouble finding a rhythm, and my spirit kept saying, Michelle, you've got to find rhythm so you can have resilience to basically survive or thrive through this universal reset. And so that's kind of where this came about. And I thought, if I'm struggling, my friends are probably struggling too. And so then I went to my team and said, what if we did something where we pulled together some of the cool people that we know and we encourage them to join us so they can help us inspire other people as we go through this process that we're going through right now. So that's what this is about. Like I said, I'd love to hear any thoughts you have about what's kind of been part of your new rhythm or resilience. And we can actually talk about that as we wrap up the show. So, hey, I met Britt Frank. Britt's work focuses on empowering people to understand the inner mechanisms of their brains and bodies. She actually knows a lot about the neuroscience. She believes that when we know how things work, the capacity for choice is restored and life can and does change. Whether she's leading a workshop, teaching a class, or working individually with private clients, it's kind of hard to see this note without my glasses, just so you know, if you see me squinting. Brent's goal is to educate, empower, and equip people to transform even their most persistent and long-standing patterns of thinking and doing. And we are being called to really look at our patterns of thinking and doing during this transformative time right now. So Britt and I met. I saw it come across my email to join her at an event with, I want to think of that, Britt, that was with probably Advent Health.
Yes.
That's with Advent Health, the Live in Vitality series. And I thought, you know what, I kind of want to go hear her and see what she has to say. And whoa, did she knock my socks off. So Britt, welcome to Rhythm and Resilience.
Thank you so much. That was a very generous introduction. I appreciate that. I'm so glad we met at that event. Seriously, that was a highlight of that event for me.
Yeah, it was a fun night. And so Britt's, as you may have noticed, I'm not having the people tell a lot of their story because they've actually Britt's been a guest on our podcast. And so we'll put that in the show notes. You can go back and hear pre-COVID interview versus post-COVID interview. So Britt, have you struggled to find a rhythm in this?
Oh my gosh, my rhythm, and I've been really wrestling because I have the rhythm that I want to set in this, in current environment, but my body doesn't want to go along with what my mind is trying to do rhythmically. And so I'm a little disjointed. I love that you're doing this. It's so, so important because I think everyone's rhythm is off right now, especially mine.
I feel like I'm starting to get a tiny bit of something this last few days. Just for sake of this conversation, I want our listeners to be able to go to the podcast to learn more, but what's your background?
Yes. So I am a trauma therapist. I specialize in a model of therapy called somatic experiencing, and that focuses on the brain and the nervous system. So essentially, if you've tried to talk your way out of a problem or think your way out of a problem, that tends to not work. And that's because there's more to our brains than just the thinking, logical reasoning. And so my training really focuses on a holistic approach to wellness and mental health and how our bodies are really our best asset in terms of being able to make choices and overcome adversity and find rhythms and cope with things like this COVID world that we now live in. And that's the focus of my work. And I'm really passionate about it.
So I've got a question for you. I heard this years ago, and I really don't have a good source. So I'm not sure if it's true or not true, but it feels right. Is something like where the body likes rhythm and the mind likes chaos? Or is it the other way around?
So much. No, that's absolutely right. And I don't know, that's a great quote. I'm going to have to look that up. I don't know if the mind likes chaos, but our mind is certainly habituated to chaos because we're humans and we're raised by humans and we live in a human, inhabited world, and our brains like what's familiar. So our bodies like rhythm, our bodies like safety, our minds go towards what we know. Our minds are not wired for happiness and joy. Our minds are wired for survival and pattern seeking. So that's probably the origin of how that quote came about. I like it. I'm using it, I'm stealing it.
Okay, well, if you find out it's true, let me know. So go back to what you just said. The mind is not looking for joy and happiness. You said it
It's
differently.
really not. Yes, our mind is habitual. So our brains are not wired for joy and peace. Joy and peace and happiness and fulfillment are very high level human concepts. Our brains are wired to keep us alive. Our brains are organized so we can survive a lion attack or a tiger attack. And we really need to work with the physiology that's very, very old. The neocortex, the thinking part of the brain, that's where we can access happiness and joy and logic and reasoning and think positive thoughts and work on challenging our cognitive distortions. But we need to know that the fight, flight, freeze, which is a lot of what's happening right now. I know myself and a lot of people just feel paralyzed. We feel, I'm frozen. I have all this time and I can't get off the couch. That's not because of laziness. That's because our bodies are primed to survive threat. And shutdown is one of the primary mechanisms that we do that. So that's really important to know that you're not lazy if you're not being epically productive right now.
So have you talked to any of your clients, and this is a big statement, any of your clients who are not struggling to find rhythm right now?
So, okay, this is really interesting. So because these times are so chaotic and so traumatic, a lot of people who have been working inundated with their own trauma or completely, steeped in addiction, they actually know what this is and how to, not what the virus is and not how to cope with that, but this dynamic of uncertainty and fear and one breath at a time and one day at a time. A lot of my clients know what that is. And they're like, yep, this is what I do all day. Welcome to trauma recovery. And collectively, we're all trying to recover from this trauma while we're in the midst of it. And so a lot of my clients are finding, yep, this is pretty par for the course.
Wow. And if we think about trauma-informed care, there's been a big old movement the last few years. What's it called? ACEs?
Yes.
Can talk about ACEs and talk about that? Because that's a really huge statement, especially when you think about how many people have had trauma. And globally, if you look at 100% of the population, what population have they said has had some form of trauma? So maybe this isn't quite a big a deal. I don't know.
I wouldn't go as far as it's not a big deal, but as far as, the ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And so there's a test of, did you grow up in a violent home? Did you grow up, with an absent parent? Have you experienced death? Were you abused? But the thing with the ACEs test is it's important to know that those types of adverse childhood experiences can lead to trauma, but everybody on the planet, if you're a human born of woman, you have experienced trauma. Trauma is anything that's too much, too fast, too soon. Trauma is anytime our brain's capacity to digest is exceeded by the amount of information. And while this is absolutely a big deal in terms of how it's affecting people's rhythms, people that understand their own trauma are doing, they're not doing, yay, I'm happy in the midst of this crisis, but they understand what's happening in their bodies so that, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? Why am I frozen? Why am I shut down? Why can't I sleep? Why is this happening? That isn't present for a lot of people. That said, no one's really, yay, I'm doing awesome in the midst of this, but it's not unfamiliar.
Well, it's interesting as I think about some of the trauma in my own life. That is so true. It took because of all the changes that was happening so fast. It was hard to, you didn't know what was happening the next minute. So you mentioned something about the couch, and I had Austin Perlmutter on the show on my podcast a few weeks ago, and he talked about the acronym TIME, and the first one was to kind of have a time limit on how much you're actually watching the news. And John talked about that as well. And I was listening to another speaker, filling my cup up, and they said, what, it's okay to be informed, but just don't sit in front of the news and watch it spin, spin, spin. So on this, we're trying to give our listeners some guidance to have resilience and rhythm through this. So what's some guidance you've been given as a practitioner, as well as that you are giving to other people?
Well, I love, and I'll just validate that, putting a time limit upon the media ingestion. We're inundated all day long. And I do it too. I notice I go on little spins where it's 4 hours later and I've looked at every site on everything. And it's good to put limits on that. Now, the best piece of resilience guidance that I've heard, that I use, that I implement, that I'd like to share is it's okay if we are not productive. This is, so I'll sum this up in brief. This is not free time. So a lot of my clients are shaming themselves, and a lot of people are, oh my gosh, I have all this free time. I should be learning a skill or building a business or taking up French lessons or whatever. But free time, the idea of free time implies that in the availability of all the choices, I choose this time to be happening. And I don't think any of us are choosing this right now. While we may have stretches of unaccounted empty time, it is not free. And so our bodies are really reacting to what's happening, not as, yay, free time, but oh my gosh, this is scary. This is uncertain. So if you're going to be stuck on the couch, that's okay. We want to separate. Watching the news all day is not healthy, but it's totally okay if you're having a couch day. Maybe limit what you're ingesting that's, further provoking the fear. But if you are just paralyzed and you need a couch day, that needs to be okay. We really want to uncouple shame from the way our bodies are responding. The faster we just accept that today's a couch day and a Cheetos and Oreos day, then the faster we can be resilient and bounce back from that. And so I've noticed my own system. It's like, okay, today is not going to be my shower, do my hair, take a walk around the block day. Today it's enough that I made it from my bed to my couch and I took my dog out. And that needs to be okay. Giving ourselves permission without shame to have our experience of this very, very terrifying time is the number one key to resilience and surviving it.
Wow. Keep going. I know you've got so much guidance to share.
Okay. I made my notes.
I've got some notes too. So give us some more, guidance. This is good stuff.
Okay. So this is where my alliteration comes in. I was so excited to share this with you. So I've seen a lot, and this is, again, no shame if this is you, but we have to think positive and we want good vibes only. And we want to really just focus on gratitude. That is wonderful to a point. But here's my alliteration. Positivity without perspective is poison. So I'm gonna break that down. So the phenomenon that I'm describing is what's known as toxic positivity. And that's when I'm good, I'm happy, I'm great, I'm awesome, I'm grateful, I'm happy. When that comes at the expense of what's true and what's real, it no longer serves the function of helping lift us up. Rather, it brings us further down.
I like that. Well, the good news is my guy Zach's on the phone, and Zach, we'll make that a quotable for you. I've not heard that before, so I love it.
Yay! Because it's true, a lot of people also are feeling guilty for not feeling grateful. Well, I have this wonderful home and, yes, I can't go anywhere, but I'm in a safe home and I have toilet paper and I have food and I have resources. It's wonderful to keep that type of perspective and that type of gratitude. And it's okay to be scared. And it's okay to feel overwhelmed. And it's okay if you're not Susie Sunshine every single day. And it doesn't take away from gratitude and joy and peace to acknowledge discomfort. And a lot of people are actually finding that with this dynamic, trauma they didn't even know they had is being triggered. So, and I don't get political ever on these things, but I'll just say, regardless of your politics, I think it certainly goes without saying that there's some chaos in our leadership and there's some incongruence in the information that's being shared. And that's very reminiscent of a chaotic childhood. If you had parents that fought a lot, if you had confusion and overwhelm and the adults around you didn't model for you how to navigate crises, seeing what's going on in the country right now is actually going to trigger that. And we need to be okay with not necessarily putting a smile all over it all the time. So positivity without perspective becomes poison. So we want to stay in truth. Sometimes the truth is light and pretty and I'm happy and it's sunny and I am going to take a walk today. And today is a shower, do my hair, eat a vegetable day. And sometimes the truth is dark and painful and scary, and that's okay too.
You're making me think about a few weeks ago, where I was just, and I'm still spinning a little bit thinking, how could I have been a better, more effective leader? And I don't think I just need to give myself some grace. You know what? I wasn't a great leader. I wasn't the leader that what I'd hoped I'd be during this type of crisis. So I just need to, so thank you for giving me permission to let it go.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what kind of leader is a good leader during this crisis. I think anybody that's willing to create spaces like this one that you created, where we can just be really, really real. I mean, okay, here's another alliteration. I'm just making these up. I love talking to you because it just comes. You know, the fundamental key to resilience is realness. You can't be resilient without realness. So if you're trying to fight your way out of what's actually true, then you're not going to be able to bounce back. So, okay, this wasn't my best look as a leader. This wasn't my best session as a therapist. Okay, that's okay. Permission granted. And now we have room to bounce back.
So let's talk about somebody being triggered to old trauma. Okay.
Yes.
What are some steps they can take to get out of it besides turning off the media and the news? What's the next step? I've done that. Now what?
So one is, and this is something I post on almost every one of my social media posts, start with the assumption that you're not crazy. Whatever your reaction is, if you are waking up and crying for quote, no reason, or if you're having a panic attack or whatever, if you start with the assumption that this, whatever you're experiencing, makes sense in context, that will help your body not go total, into overdrive. So the number one thing you tell yourself is, okay, this is what's happening. I'm not crazy. This makes sense. I don't know what the context is. I don't know why it's happening. I don't need to, but somewhere this makes sense. Okay. Then the second thing is, I don't need to try to feel good in this moment. Sometimes resilience is accessed by making a moment bearable, not necessarily joyful. How do I make this moment bearable? How do I make it less bad? So sometimes searching for the less bad instead of trying to make something good can be really, really useful, especially if there's trauma. And not to worry so much about, oh my gosh, I have trauma and now what? No one is really healing anything right now. We're all in survival mode. Everyone is trying to survive this. And so we want to I need to thrive and overcome and reach my goals. We need to take that off. If that's what happens, cool, gravy, frosting, but it's certainly not the goal.
Wow. That was a pretty big about survival, getting out of, we are all in survival mode. So when you've called somebody, because you've got some really great friends that are, leaders in therapy and et cetera, therapists around the country, are you hearing some other guidance from them? I've shared on this, the guidance I got a few weeks ago was, are you okay right now? Instead of thinking about 6 months from now or 6 days from now or
6 hours from now.
6 hours
yeah.
from now. But in this moment, are you okay?
I love that so much. And that goes along with the permission. Where I'm at now might not be where I'm at in 30 minutes. So right now, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. Or right now, I'm really not okay. And another practical, actionable how-to is, who are my people? If there's I don't like looking necessarily for silver linings, but if there's a positive to be found here, it's that people are willing to ask that question. Normally, hey, how are you is a throwaway, at the store. It's, oh, how are you? I'm good. How are you? I'm great. Now the question, how are you, has some gravity. It has some weight. And so I think people are much more accessible to not only ask that question, but to have someone say to them, I'm not okay. Can you just chat with me for a few minutes? And so I think everyone is a little bit more receptive. I know I'm reaching out to people that I necessarily wouldn't, and they're very receptive, and vice versa. I'm like, oh, this person's texting me, cool. So in this age of social distancing, we're more connected, and the ability to be connected is actually greater.
Yeah, people try to compare this to the Spanish flu in 1918, and you think, well, we didn't have social media, we didn't even have the internet.
Right.
So imagine reaching out back then.
Throwing, paper planes across, and there's nothing to compare this to. And that's part of the dilemma, right? Again, our brains are organized for pattern seeking, but no one has experienced this before. We can try to liken it to other things, but this is all new. And so again, this chaos that we're in needs to be met with what makes me feel safe, what makes me feel safer, or what will help me feel a little bit less unsafe. If you can't access safety and comfort, can you access 2 degrees less bad? Who are your people? Who can I reach out to? Who's my network? And social media is great for this right now, because if you don't have friends and you don't have support, there's a lot of people doing things like what you're doing, where you can just show up and be encouraged and supported.
one thing that I've looked at and been talking about a lot the last week is Dunbar. Have you heard of Dunbar, where he does a whole video about kind of building your tribe and how there's a magic number that you really can kind of manage? And
the Dunbar number, yes.
Yes. So we'll put that in the show notes here, but it's really a great way to start to think about really who are your people. And I think that's one of the gifts that I'm going to continue to find out, who really is a champion for and helps me stay up, and how do we do that? So we'll put that in the show notes, that it really has been helpful for me. So Britt, as you're thinking about this and you're thinking about guidance, tell me, what are some of the gifts you've been receiving?
I think I've met all of my neighbors. I'm a New Yorker, so, inherently you don't talk to neighbors as a New Yorker. These are just the people around you. And in my neighborhood, I know my immediate neighbors, but in my walks around the block, when I'm having, I'm out of bed and up days, I've met everybody. And there are some wonderful people doing amazing things. Are you familiar with the Nextdoor app?
No.
Okay, so this is part of my, quarantine. What do I do with these hours? So it's this app where it's neighborhood specific. So it's just the people within 5 to 10 miles of you, and people are sharing and supporting each other. Someone said, I have extra hand sanitizer. I can go do shopping for my elderly neighbors. And people are offering help. And, Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, he said this, that when children are frightened, teach them to look for the helpers. Teach them to look for the people that are showing up. When I'm having a bad day, I'll look on the Nextdoor app, and I just feel so much more encouraged about humanity when I see, thank you, Carol, when I see who's helping. And that inspires me to want to give help when I'm able and to ask for help when I need it.
Speaking of kids, and thinking about this being probably a first major trauma for some kids, not all, but some kids, what's some parenting advice for our listeners, or maybe for their grandchildren?
So it's really interesting, because for children, this might not necessarily register as traumatic because they don't know any other way. So some children may actually come through this totally unscathed. And this happens with the grieving process too, where adults think the children are like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And in the fussing sort of create an environment of anxiety. But the thing for parents to know is it's okay if your kids are okay. That they're not blocking, they're not denying, they're not minimizing. Some kids are like, okay, I'm bored, I'm home, and that's okay, I'm fine. So if your kids are okay, it's okay that they're okay. And then if your kids are not okay, what little kids need to know is this is not their fault. It's funny, I was just talking to someone, a therapist friend, right before this call, that the ability to think abstractly doesn't develop until later. So this very literal, concrete thinking, a lot of kids think this is their fault. I was bad, I caused the virus. This is my fault. So little kiddos need to know this isn't anything that they have caused. In the absence of information, children are egocentric. They're supposed to be little narcissists. That's developmentally appropriate. They need to know this isn't about them and it's not their fault. It seems weird. It's like, well, why would they think that? Because that's how a lot of little kids are wired, concrete thinking. There's a bad thing happening. Well, I did a bad thing. I was mean to my sister, so I must have caused COVID. So letting them know this isn't their fault, and that you as the adults are going to do everything you can to keep them safe.
Okay. What other advice for your kids?
Well, playing is hard because traumatic circumstances don't usually coincide well with play. However, children are the masters, the ninjas of being able to play. So if you can get in there and play with them, you'll see them, they'll be acting out medical scenes. Kids use play to try to process what's going on in the world. So if your kids want to play hospital and play doctor and play virus, that's scary for a lot of adults, but take a deep breath and ground yourself and sort of lean into how your children want to play and let them direct the play. Every parent can be a play therapist just by letting the kids steer.
Oh, that is wonderful advice today. We need to make sure we share that. Is there a, with play therapy, with what you just said, is there a website or some place people can go to get some more guidance on that?
Yes, I really love the Association for Play Therapy, and their website is a4pt.org. I don't know if they speak specifically about how to navigate medical trauma and COVID. They might, I haven't checked, but there's great info on there. And what I'm talking about is called non-directive play therapy. And that's literally like, let the kid be the boss. And if they want to make little face masks and run around saving people, that's actually a way that they're processing what's happening. And it's a way of preventing them from being traumatized later on.
That is some great wisdom. Okay. I'm loving the kids. So we have talk story therapy tomorrow. And so we'll dive in more to personal relationships with that day. Talk a little bit about more of the gifts.
So the gifts, well, I think people are starting to talk about mental health. When you see mental health articles in the Wall Street Journal, that's a really encouraging shift, because people were suffering pre-COVID and they're suffering in this environment of COVID, and they're going to be suffering long after this is a memory and life goes, not back to normal, but life continues on in its new normal. And so being able to check in on people's mental health, I don't only have therapist friends, I have like normie, non-mental healthy friends. And it's wonderful to have them asking, hey, how's your nervous system today? Like, are you feeling super amped? Are you feeling super sludgy, freezy? And having this language that we're all speaking now, the language of connection and the language of mental health, is something that not a lot of people were fluent in, and we're developing more fluency out of necessity, which is wonderful.
Well, since you're a therapist that specializes in the nervous system, which I think it makes you a little bit unique, talk about the nervous system. As a chiropractor, I specialize in the nervous system too. So we have a commonality, but yet we approach it differently. So talk about the nervous system from your perspective, and then ways to kind of throw water on fires that's burning.
Oh, I love that metaphor. So with the nervous system, it helps to know that there are mechanisms in the body that we don't actually control. It's called the autonomic nervous system because it's automatic. I can't tell my body, here's how I want you to digest this food, go. It especially, when I'm feeding it less than ideal things. So it's important to know that there are automatic functions in your body that are contributing to your mood and your mental state. And the biggest thing that I think is helpful is to know about the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, and vagus comes from the Latin, which means wanderer, and it goes to all the different organs, and it does a lot of things. But one of the things this nerve does is shut your body down in the face of threats, and you cannot outthink that. So if you're feeling totally unmotivated, I hate that phrase because that's a nervous system function, not a moral or a strength versus weak function. But if your vagus nerve shuts your body down, it's important to know that one of the fastest ways to get out of that kind of like dorsal vagal freeze, which is what it's called, is rhythm. The rhythm of, I play patty cake over Zoom with people because those types of rhythmic games actually get us out of that freeze state. So music, I have a client, I think this is great. I have a few clients that do dance breaks during the day. So, when they know 3 o'clock is going to hit, and that's when just the doldrums start coming in, they blast music and they do a minute-long dance break. Connecting with other people and rhythm are really, really effective mechanisms of getting your nervous system back up and running again when it's feeling shut down, which is so cool.
Well, and I'm guessing sleep probably rates somewhere to help reset the nervous system as well.
Absolutely. And sleep is, if you can get it right now, that's great. Sleep hygiene, I don't think has ever been more important, which is shut the devices down an hour before bed and really work on, landing your body. Because if you try to go from fear, anxiety, terror, now I need to go to sleep, you're not going to sleep. So one thing that's really useful is there's a lot of children's, and this isn't for just kids, for adults, like for me, there are people on YouTube reading children's books, and being read to is incredibly soothing to the nervous system. And so I'll put on a story as I'm going to bed, just pop my headphones in, get on YouTube, and being read a story is a wonderful way to promote that safety that's necessary for sleep to occur.
On our program, we put out a wellness plan to a lot of our clients, and we actually gave away all of our 21-day programs. And one of the 21-day programs is about sleep and some things you can do to get good sleep hygiene. And I've been a pretty good sleeper most of my life. A few times it's changed. And I've had a few, of course, sleepless nights the last few weeks. And I actually take a supplement that's actually been good for the immune system too. Melatonin, 5-HTP, and some magnesium. It's called Insomnitol, and it's a chewable. I don't take it every night, but if I have one bad night, okay. But if I have the second bad night, I'm like, Michelle, your immune system needs you to sleep. And so I'll actually have a sleep aid that I just chew right about 30 minutes before bed. Another tool I use is something called Brain Tap, and you could use it with the Calm app, different things like that. This is a tap technology that's it's not tapping, emotional freedom technique. It's actually a technology where they have certain binaural beats, which changes the brain. Have you heard about it, Britt?
Yes, I love that kind of thing. And you need to have, the dual headphones, so it goes and does bilateral brain stimulation, which is so settling.
Yeah. This one also has a headset. I've got it downstairs by my bed, but it has a headset that also goes to the eyes, where lights go to the eyes, and lights actually stimulate the acupuncture points in the ear. We had Shemaine Tate on yesterday, on Tuesday, and she talked about acupuncture. And we didn't talk about auricular therapy, but something you do with your kids, you actually could rub your ears. You can stimulate the whole nervous system and every single part of your body through the ears. So I would recommend.
And the fingers.
And the fingers. We talked about doing some Jinsu Jitsu yesterday, and stimulating the lung breathing once again on Total Health Tuesday. So this is a great time if you have questions for Britt. By the way, she's amazing. She's world known. I would encourage you to put the questions in the chat box now, and we'll get to those. Britt, as we start to kind of shift, what habit have you really been focusing on that you weren't focusing on before this, besides turning off the TV?
Well, one of my practices, and I know we talked about this, I think, on your podcast, is I try to start my day with a practice called Morning Pages. And it's from Julia Cameron's work, The Artist's Way. And it's just 3 stream of consciousness, nonsense, it's just brain drain. And it's everything from just whatever's in my head. I have a podcast interview today, and then I need to take the trash out and da-da-da-da-da. But doing 3 longhand stream of consciousness writing really helps my brain set and get ready for the day. I don't really have the luxury of not doing it during these times. Like, when life was normal, there were days I skipped it and I was fine. But that practice has become so central as a sacred part of my day, to take the 15 minutes to just sit with my coffee and do my writing and get myself grounded and anchored in my body so I can face whatever the day has for me.
It's funny. I just did a podcast interview with somebody, and they were talking about how Julia Cameron's work from The Artist's Way really helped them. And then one of our future guests, Sonia Choquette, actually, her and Julie worked on some of her books together in the initial. So it's always fun how everything just weaves together. And as you guys are connecting here, it'll be interesting to see. What I find fascinating, because my coach says be fascinated, not frustrated. What I'm going to find fascinated is what connections happen during this time that become lifelong relationships.
Which is so fascinating. I mean, I've talked to people on social media that I have developed friendships with. When people say social media is not real life, well, social media, like anything, can be used for good or it can be used for not good. And I have met some amazing people. When this is over, I'm going to travel and I want to meet them in person and I want to hug them. And, they're my COVID buddies. And it's really amazing and then reconnections. People from 20 years ago that I'm bored. So I'm just going to say, hey, how's the fam? How's it going? So connection and reconnection is fascinating right now. Agree.
Something I read yesterday as I'm, trying to sift through some material for my own mental well-being. I read where somebody changed, we need to change it to, instead of big C COVID, little c COVID. Didn't you love that? It's like, okay, let me just, that. It's little c COVID. Let me start to minimize it. Not that we're minimizing what's happening to people around us or to ourselves and people that are getting this virus and that won't survive it. But how do we start to just throw water on that fire? So that was my takeaway yesterday in reading.
I love that. And that also fits into are we obviously this is a real problem. It's a very real threat. It is scary. And if our reaction is way bigger than our, so let's say that, you know, you do have a safe home and you have the ability to quarantine and have groceries delivered and you have all the resources available to keep you safe, and yet days of crying and not sleeping. Well, if it's an incongruent reaction, that's a sign that there might be some trauma. So great. Now we know, and we want to keep our reaction to COVID about COVID. It's hard enough right now to actually deal with it without stacking on other traumas, mom stuff, dad stuff, family of origin stuff, whatever. So we want to appropriate it to its proper place.
You know, we're going to have to dive into that because it makes me think of in the year 2002, about this time, actually, you know, in the cycle of my 20 years in business, there's been the ebbs and the flows. There's been the really, really lows and the really, really highs, but it's mostly kind of in this range here. And by the way, to our people listening, this is a great time to say kind of what your takeaway is from today with Britt, and possibly any questions you have. This is a great time to do that. And so I remember going back to therapy. I've done a lot of therapy in my life, like most people. But I remember in 2002, very distinctly, I went to see actually Linda Moore. And what Linda's a therapist in Kansas City, very well known. And I was struggling because I had 3 of my practitioners leave. And typically what people do is I'm a people collector. I collect people. I help build them because I'm a builder. I love to connect. I'm always thinking about the dots. And we just actually, it's so funny we're having this conversation because we just had some therapists leave our office literally March 31st.
Oh, wow.
It was a little bit uneventful because of COVID, but I think about in 2002, we had built this new beautiful building and we had 35 practitioners working together. And then some of them said, you know what, I really like the old way, you know, where it was more intimate. And so we had 3 practitioners leave and it just crushed me because they were like my kids, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but I remember going to therapy because I had to go to therapy to walk through that. And what she said to me, Michelle, you just opened up a trash can. And from all your abandonment issues, you just dove right in the whole trash can. So what you're feeling is not just the top level, you dove into that. So talk about how, and I didn't know how to not dive into it, maybe because I had to heal something that, you know, there's a saying, in order to heal it, you've got to reveal it. So how can people keep it here and not go down to all the shit in their life? Excuse my language. I said shit yesterday too. Shift, all the shift into their life.
I'm working really hard not to swear on here. So far, so good. I've got 20 minutes left with purely clean language. So, well, one, like you said, you know, you have to reveal it. You have to feel it to heal it. It's not bad to take the lid off the trash can. If your trash is full and it's smelly and it's gross, if you don't take the lid off, then things are going to stink. So number one, I think that being triggered is looked at as a negative. And so we want to start by saying being triggered isn't bad. You know, it's not like I want to be triggered every which way to Tuesday, but triggers reveal unhealed content. So triggers are important. So triggers are not necessarily bad. So that's number one. Number two is evaluate again, are you reacting higher than a 5 on a 1 to 10? And if your reaction to whatever is higher than a 5 on a 1 to 10, it's almost a guarantee that there's some trash can content there, some trauma trash can content that's going on. And again, starting with, okay, I have some unhealed content. Great. I'm not crazy. I'm not bad. This doesn't make me broken. I have some injuries and now I get to heal them. Cool. Yay. Bring it.
So, you know what? When this is over, we're going to have a cocktail in person. And, but I can have about this much cocktail because then my nose goes numb. It's the craziest thing. I must have something genetically. My body does not do well with alcohol because I try to participate, but I just can't. So I may be drinking sparkling water. But think about how can our listeners connect with you and learn more? And what if they are realizing that they have some trash to clean up, but they don't have a therapist? What's the best way to find a therapist?
So, and not everyone has the resources to do private therapy. I have a book list on my website, and before I found the right therapist, I did a lot of reading and a lot of selfie, helpy kinds of things. And right now, that's great. You do what you can. So my website is thegreenhousekc.com, and there's a tab called Britt's Bookshelf. And so all of the books on there speak to all different manifestations of trauma, family stuff, shame stuff, depression, anxiety, whatever your thing is. That's a good place to start, because all of the people who taught me, I reference their work on my website. So that would be my recommendation, is if you can, start reading, start listening to podcasts, or decide, you know what, I have trauma. Now is not the time where I'm able to work on it. And that's okay too. You know, again, there's surviving and thriving, but we're still in the, like, you can't have post-traumatic stress until you get to the post. So no one has PTSD right now because we're still in it. So if now is not the right time to heal your trauma, great. Make a mental note. I have it. I have some things to work out. I don't want to work it out in the middle of this COVID crisis, and that's okay too.
I want to eat chocolate.
I want Oreos and Cheetos. I don't know what about the combination it is. I want to eat like a 5-year-old that's my thing.
So why Greenhouse KC?
So KC, because Kansas City, and I know we've talked about this. I love your city. I love this city so much. A greenhouse is a structure where the conditions are very carefully created to support growth and change. And it's hot. I don't know a better way to describe the therapy room than a really hot room, the temperature turned way up, where the conditions are carefully created for growth, repair, and change. So people are plants, and I love my plants. I'm a plant mama.
Well, what's so funny is I got a chance to meet you through the Live in Vitality through Advent Health, and then come to find out you're friends with Meredith Atwood.
Yes.
Who this actually, I want to tell you, I stole Meredith's idea. I was watching her do this with her community, and I thought, you know what, I could do that with my community. And so here we are. So
another connection. I mean, really, I would have put you and then and I met Meredith on social media. So, well, no, I met her through a friend. Anyway, social media is a great connector. I love that you're doing, this is so important. And thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Miriam and Eleanor and everyone who's commenting right now.
Well, and it's interesting that I met Meredith because of Ann Sharkey, and I met Ann because I did a triathlon. It just all the connections. So here's a fun game to play with yourself right now, and thinking about Wisdom Wednesdays is think about some of your connections of maybe in that, as we're going to give you the Dunbar thing. I'd encourage you to watch that video, but think about your circle like this, and then how is that circle connected? That's a fun game, but maybe that's just my neurons doing some of that connection. The other thing is too, and we had on the podcast, Lori Gerber, and she works with is it Lauren Zander? Do you know, is it Lauren Zander? I thought with the Handel group. I thought you were connected with the Handel group.
I am not, but I will need to be now.
Yeah, you will. They're your people. So many great stuff. So let me see. Do we have questions? Eleanor, I'm gonna unmute you. There we go. Oh, you're unmuting. I'm unmuting you. I got it.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Hi. I got this is Eleanor, by the way. She's doing all the back end work with my guy Zach. I think Zach popped off, maybe or maybe not. I can't see everybody. There he is. With my guy Zach, they are taking care of it. So I just shut my chat screen. Any questions in the chat, Eleanor?
No questions.
Just some
one, but yeah, a lot of positive just messages. I think the main theme is everyone is super appreciative of just granting themselves permission to not feel productive, not to all of these things. Just basically give themselves grace seems to be the most potent takeaway today. So thank you. But I was wondering with Wisdom Wednesdays is what wisdom do you think we'll receive from COVID decades, maybe a century from now, looking back?
That is such a great question. And it's a big question. So, okay. So what wisdom will we receive from COVID? I'm going to reframe that because I don't want to give credit to because, it's the mechanism, but I don't want to give it too much airtime. But I think what we'll learn from each other is how to human. It really is ironic that the most human I've experienced, the culture and the collective has been now. We're more human, not less. We're more communicated, more connected, less isolated. And that works. And working from home works too. I think that's a big lesson, that this is not as good as in person, where I can see you and high five and hug you and see all your micro expressions on your face, but that this works. And in times of crisis, things can get done really fast. It's pretty amazing how quickly all of a sudden things have gotten accomplished. Like, wow, it's a bummer that it takes a crisis to make things move, but hopefully this will be, the way we do things. We see a problem, we fix it fast.
Such great wisdom today. Once again, I recommend you go to greenhousekc.com and learn more about Britt. Like I said, we'll have a couple things in the show notes. We'll have her podcast. We can learn more about her and her story. I'm intentionally not diving into stories. I really want to get to the guidance and the hope. And tomorrow we'll be having a Talk Story Thursday, and my special guest will be Crystal Jenkins. Some of you know Crystal. She's a therapist at our office, and she works for the Hoffman process, and she will be sharing some of her wisdom about relationships, not only with yourself, but really how to navigate some of the relationships, especially maybe you're home with your significant other all the time now, and how are you navigating that through this time? As we wrap up, the way I like to wrap up, Britt, is basically saying thank you so much. And I want to share with you how you inspire me. How you inspire me from the moment I met you is you're a very effective communicator. And I love that about you. I have a huge heart. I think I have one of the biggest hearts anybody know, but I didn't do very well in English in pronunciation. So for me to actually have the courage to do something like this, I will tell you my secret. I never watch anything after I've done it because I would never do it again. But I love that about you. I love how you are connected and you're wicked smart. And you inspire me, and I'm so looking forward to continuing to get to know you through the years. Once again, from our people, they loved your resiliency with realness. In order to be resilient, you've got to have your realness as well as permission. So we are grateful for the gifts today. I encourage you to all share this. We'll be sharing this on social media and out to you tomorrow. Share it with your friends. Let's spread the hope around the world that we're going to get to the other side of this.
Thank you so much. I'm just speechless. I love being around you so much. You're so inspiring. You're wicked smart. I love the Boston. Wicked smart, really. And I'm so honored and so great. It's funny, I'm an introvert. Like, I am not a go out in the world and people person. So this is still scary and nerve-wracking for me too. But I so appreciate the space that you created and just the way you human in the world. It's an honor to know you.
Blessings. All right, everybody, go out and have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Hey, love yourself up. Okay, and I can't wait to hug you all in person. Bye-bye now.
Heart.
I sure appreciate you listening to Small Changes, Big Shifts. If you go to the website, smallchangesbigshifts.com, we'll have the show notes ready for you there. If this episode inspired you to make a small change that will lead to a big shift, please share with a friend. You can catch our episode on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and our website. And if you feel like it, please leave a rating or a comment. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch our episode next week. Blessings to you.